Boldwood presents A Marriage to Murder For, written by E.V. Hunter and read by Emma Powell. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Another scorching summer. What is going on with the weather? It's not at all British. Alexi Ellis fanned her face with her hand and retreated further beneath the enveloping parasol on the terrace of Hopgood Hall, the boutique hotel in which she was a minority shareholder. A torpid breeze agitated the hot air like a rampaging hairdryer, sapping her energy. Perhaps we should consider installing a swimming pool if this is the way it's going to be in the future, what with global warming and all. Alexi's friend and co-owner of the hotel, Cheryl Hopgood, held her baby daughter Verity on her knee, jiggling her up and down and making her giggle. "We're only just about in profit," she said, striking a note of caution. "I enjoy not having to juggle the bills, deciding which ones to pay and which ones to ignore, so let's not get too ambitious. Summers as hot as this one may not endure. It's never safe to predict the English weather. Anyway, punters don't come to Lambourne to swim." Alexi conceded the point with a nod. "True enough. Just enjoy the peace and quiet while it lasts, which won't be for long." Alexi grinned, aware that the stag party they were preparing to host would indeed be raucous as the groom enjoyed his final few hours of freedom. "That child will be walking soon." Alexi grinned at her goddaughter as she tried to wiggle off Cheryl's lap. "She's as impatient to embrace life as her father. Give her a chance, she's only 7 months old." Cheryl paused. "You're not serious about the swimming pool, are you?" Alexi smiled at her feral cat, Cosmo, who'd positioned himself beneath the fountain in the courtyard so that water splashed onto his upturned belly. A black cat with piercing hazel eyes flecked with silver, he clearly felt the heat as much as the rest of them. Toby, Cheryl's little terrier, who was half Cosmo's size, was devoted to the cat and had flopped down beside him in the partial shade. "No, I guess not," Alexi replied, responding to Cheryl's question. "But you must admit, we've done well." Cheryl nodded with apparent reluctance. "It's hard for me to think that way when our popularity is partly due to the ghouls who want to visit Murder Central." Cheryl was referring to the murder of a contestant in a celebrity cooking contest that had been held at the hotel during the winter. The show had topped the TV ratings, ensuring a steady flow of clients for Hopgood Hall. Well, that and the fact that Alexi and her partner, private detective Jack Maddox, had been instrumental in solving that crime, as well as since no one could recall the last time that anyone had been murdered in a village dominated by racehorses, it wasn't surprising that the curious were drawn to the area, bursting with conspiracy theories. Alexi was an investigative journalist, or had been until her position on the Sentinel was terminated. In retrospect, it was the best thing that could have happened to her, although at the time it had seemed like the ultimate betrayal. Her editor-in-chief and former lover, Patrick Vaughan, had known that redundancies were in the offing, but hadn't given her the heads up. Instead, he tried to make her take a lower position. She'd refused and forced a generous settlement out of the paper. Patrick had continued to pursue her, attempting to lure her back to London. He and Jack hated one another on sight, but it was Jack whom Alexi now lived with. Although living with was an exaggeration, she reasoned. Jack's private investigation service had been enhanced by the publicity that the TV murder had created. He seemed to be working away from Lambourne more and more and was often gone for an entire week at a time. Alexi was cool with that. She'd gotten badly burned with Patrick and wasn't about to give her entire heart to another man. Not now. Perhaps not ever. Besides, she was busy with her literary commitments. A book on the inside view of the TV murder and various articles that she'd offered to the press. One such article, completed while she'd been in London, was about homeless people. She'd visited a group of them beneath the arches several times, which is where she'd encountered Cosmo. For reasons that Alexi hadn't understood at the time and still didn't, the antisocial cat, who disliked and mistrusted people in general, had made an exception in her case and decided to adopt her. He was proving to be a very good judge of character, Although he'd mellowed, if he took against someone, then Alexei had learned to trust his instincts. He had been banned from the TV set because he tended to attack people's ankles for his own amusement, but had also become a star of the show and was another reason why people flocked to the hotel. "Don't talk of murder in front of my daughter." Drew Hopgood came up to them, moving silently for such a large man, and kissed both his wife and his little girl. "It's all anyone around here does talk about," Cheryl replied. "But if it keeps the wolf from the door, then who am I to complain?" "This weather is just what we need for the celebrity wedding of the year," Drew added, flopping down on the chair beside his wife, staring up at a crystal-clear sky and scooping Verity into his arms. He dangled her above his head, making the baby gurgle with laughter. "Thank you, weather gods. Nothing will go wrong this time." Drew nodded in the direction of the organised action coming from the annex, where the wedding of Christabel Hennessy, minor television celebrity, beautiful socialite, online influencer, and bridezilla extraordinaire, was to be married in son of the most prominent trainer in the Valley of the Racehorse. "It had better not," Cheryl grinned. "Although even I have been close to strangling Christabel once or twice. How hard can it be for one woman to make up her mind and stick to it?" "Fortunately, Marcel doesn't take any of her nonsense," Alexei replied, referring to the hotel's celebrity chef, a natural on the small screen, who had been originally suspected of murdering the unfortunate contestant who'd met an untimely end. His innocence had only served to increase his popularity, which was another reason why the hotel was doing so well. Marcel's tantrums were usually public and almost always contrived to enhance his reputation as the ultimate temperamental chef. The punters lapped it up. "She's met her match there." "Oh, here's Isabel." Alexei raised a hand half-heartedly as the wedding planner approached their group. "What's up this time?" "Oh, isn't it hot?" Isabel sat on a stool and removed her jacket. Why she was wearing one when the temperature had to be in the high 80s, Alexei was at a loss to understand. "I've been watching the weather forecast like a hawk. A week to go before the big one, and there's talk of the weather breaking, storms in the offing." "It wouldn't dare," Alexei replied. "You'd think not, but I guess the elements aren't afraid of Christabel." "Then they're braver than me," Drew said with a theatrical shudder. "We have a massive marquee," Cheryl pointed out, indicating the structure with a wave of one hand. It was an extension leading off from the annex, home to a flamboyant floral bower beneath which the couple would exchange their vows. "No one will get wet and have their hats ruined." "Actually, that's what I came to talk to you about." Isabel paused, looking fraught. "Christabel would like the marquee to be set up facing the other way. She thinks the photographs will be better with that orientation." Drew laughed. "Impossible. We've already explained that to her several times. If the weather remains fine and the sides are rolled up, people will want to stroll into the courtyard, not walk into the bloody fountain." Isabel rolled her eyes. "I realise that, but Christabel really is a nightmare. She enjoys throwing her weight around and is quite the most demanding, self-centred bride I've worked with, which is saying something." "Why do you do this job if it creates so much stress?" Alexei asked. "Why does anyone do anything?" Isabel shrugged. "I kind of fell into it by accident, and despite everything, it's a good living. For the record, not all brides are so demanding." She smiled. "Just most of them, but I can handle the odd tantrum." "I do wonder if Giles knows what he's letting himself in for," Cheryl said. "Unless he exerts himself, and he's done precious little of that over the wedding preparations as far as I've seen." "I heard him and Simon Morton, his best man, in the bar the other night," Drew said. "They didn't realise I was behind the partition sorting the wine delivery. No one else was anywhere near them, and Simon was having a real go at Giles, telling him it wasn't too late to back out." "Hardly the role of a best man," Alexei said. "They go back years, I think," Isabel said. "Did Simon say why he thought Giles was making a mistake?" "Well," Drew rolled his eyes dramatically, "as you know, I'm not one to gossip. But—" "Come on, don't keep us in suspense," Alexei urged, laughing at his theatrics. "Why am I only just hearing this?" Cheryl asked at the same time. "It seems that Simon and Christabel were an item for a while." "No."